The silence inside the Aston Martin garage at Zandvoort tells you everything. This is a team that poured hundreds of millions into a new campus, signed Fernando Alonso, and arrived with championship ambitions. Yet here they are, halfway through 2026, still searching for the breakthrough. That breakthrough arrived in a crate containing Honda's latest power unit, an upgrade so significant the entire paddock was watching when Alonso rolled out on Friday morning. The timing screens told a story that seemed impossible. Alonso ended the session in 12th place. Lance Stroll wound up at the very bottom. But the rain that soaked Zandvoort turned this session into a test, not a competition. In conditions where grip is the only currency, horsepower becomes irrelevant. What the engineers were really measuring was how the new energy recovery system responded to the banked corners. The real test was never going to happen on a wet track. The dry running that will follow, the qualifying simulations, the long runs on slick tires, that is where the true potential of this power unit will either save Aston Martin's season or expose how far they still have to go. The brutal reality of Aston Martin's season can be measured in a single number. At the Spanish Grand Prix, both Alonso and Stroll qualified more than a full second behind the driver in 20th place. A team that had signed Adrian Newey and forged a new partnership with Honda found itself trapped at the back with a machine that could barely complete races. The power unit vibrated badly, the chassis was overweight, and the aerodynamic concept simply did not work. The Hungarian Grand Prix brought the first real sign of life. Aston Martin arrived with a B-spec package comprising 16 new parts, a complete rework of the side pod, floor, rear wing, and suspension. The team had effectively built a new car. The chassis was no longer the problem, but the engine remained a massive handicap. Honda had developed the least powerful power unit on the grid. That is why this weekend matters more than any other. Honda has brought its only major power unit upgrade of the entire year, a Spec 2 engine featuring improvements to the combustion chamber, pistons, and lubrication systems. In a midfield where teams are separated by tenths, that small margin could mean everything. Honda Racing Corporation's chief engineer Shintaro Orihara stood in the Zandvoort garage, knowing that months of work at Sakura were about to face their first real test. This was the only in-season engine upgrade Honda would receive all year, granted through Formula One's additional development system. Orihara had been unusually open about what the team had changed. The changes are not dramatic revolutions. Honda focused on making the combustion process faster, modifying the pre-chamber, reshaping the piston geometry, and overhauling lubrication systems to reduce internal friction. These changes alter how the engine delivers its power and how it interacts with every other system in the car. A power unit upgrade is never just about horsepower. It is about energy management, torque delivery on corner exit, and braking stability. Honda has prioritized pure power output, openly admitting performance was their biggest weakness. But the data from that wet session was never going to tell the full story. The real evaluation begins when the track dries out. Zandvoort is a roller coaster of high-speed corners and banked turns that demands everything from a Formula One car. Turn 3 climbs uphill with banking that pushes the suspension to its limit. The final corner forces drivers to brake while still turning, a terrifying combination. On a dry day, Zandvoort punishes any weakness in aero balance. On a wet day, it becomes a lottery where the timing screens lie. That is exactly what happened in first practice. The rain turned every lap into an experiment. Every driver was running with their power units turned down, their engines in safety mode. The timesheets were meaningless. What mattered was what happened inside the garage, where engineers were mapping energy recovery patterns and testing how the new power unit responded to Zandvoort's banking in low-grip conditions. Aston Martin ran long stints on intermediate tires to measure how the new combustion characteristics affected traction. Honda's engineers were looking at energy harvesting numbers. The lap times were a distraction. The real work was happening in the telemetry streams flowing back to the factory. Andrea Kimi Antonelli turned 20 on the Tuesday before the Dutch Grand Prix. By Friday, the Mercedes driver in his second full season had reminded everyone why he leads the World Championship by 50 points. Lewis Hamilton sits second with 171 points, George Russell is third with 168, and Charles Leclerc holds fourth with 145. What makes this championship fight compelling is the variety of forces at play. Mercedes has the momentum, but Ferrari lurks with two world champions. Hamilton at 41 remains hungry. Leclerc has matured into one of the most complete drivers. Russell continues to prove he belongs at the sharp end. Lando Norris, the reigning champion, sits fifth with 134 points. A resurgent Aston Martin does not just threaten the midfield, it threatens the balance of power at the front. Every point Alonso steals is a point Mercedes, Ferrari, or McLaren cannot afford to lose. If Honda's upgrade delivers, Aston Martin could become the spoiler that reshapes the entire championship. Yuki Tsunoda finished 17th in that wet session, a result that looks unremarkable but tells almost nothing about what his weekend actually represents. The Japanese driver has been a fixture on the grid since 2021, but this weekend carries a weight far beyond his position. Tsunoda is the only Honda-backed driver on the grid, the human link between the manufacturer's development program and the racetrack. The conditions at Zandvoort made Tsunoda's job even more difficult. Relearning a car's behavior in the wet is one of the most challenging tasks in motorsport. The banked corners require a completely different braking technique, and the changing grip levels demanded constant adjustments. What looked like a quiet 17th place was actually a masterclass in data collection. The connection between Tsunoda and Honda runs deep. He has been part of their driver program since his formative years. When Tsunoda tells Honda's engineers that the power delivery feels inconsistent, they know he is describing a problem that could cost them tenths of a second. His feedback will shape the setup changes and whether his data can help Aston Martin unlock the potential of this new power unit. Inside the Aston Martin garage, the tension is palpable. Engineers huddle around screens, searching for patterns that could unlock performance when the track dries. The floor has been redesigned, the front wing end plates reshaped, and the suspension adjusted. But all of these changes are meaningless without the right setup compromise. The team must decide whether to prioritize qualifying pace or race durability. The numbers on the screens tell a complicated story. The new power unit shows promise in the energy harvesting zones, but the combustion changes have introduced a torque delivery that feels aggressive in the mid-range. A softer torque curve could save tire life but cost lap time in qualifying. A more aggressive map could put Aston Martin in the top 10, but leave them vulnerable on Sunday. The reliability question looms over every decision. Honda has confirmed this Spec 2 power unit addresses the vibration issues, but pushing any engine to its limit carries risk. A failure in qualifying means a grid penalty. A failure in the race means 0 points. The engineers know the true potential will only be revealed when they turn the engine up to maximum power. The question is whether they have the courage to take that risk. The rain that fell over Zandvoort on Friday morning was never going to be the final word on Honda's upgraded power unit. It was a delay, nothing more. When the track dries out, the truth about this engine will reveal itself in the timing screens. The data from that wet session was incomplete, but the engineers have what they need to guide their setup decisions. The real evaluation begins on Saturday morning. The championship consequences are impossible to ignore. If this power unit delivers the promised gains, even 0.05 to 1/10 of a second, Aston Martin could reshape the entire midfield battle. Every position Alonso gains is a position taken from McLaren, Williams, or Alpine. A single tenth could move Aston Martin from the edge of the top 10 into the points, changing their trajectory for the rest of the season. The weekend ahead promises drama far beyond the Aston Martin garage. Antonelli will look to extend his lead, Hamilton will chase his first Ferrari victory, and Russell will attempt to prove his worth. But the most compelling story remains the one happening in the garage, where Alonso waits for confirmation that his team's gamble has paid off. The rain delayed the truth, but it could not hide it forever. When the checkered flag falls on Sunday afternoon, we will finally know whether Aston Martin has built a contender or just another promise. The answers are coming.